Welcome to She is Resilient, a podcast for women on their healing journeys who are ready to start living their most authentic and empowered lives outside of survival mode. I'm your host, Tatiana, trauma and somatic therapist, as well as a holistic coach, and I'm on a mission to help more women heal their nervous systems. Each week, me and my guests are going to get real and vulnerable about the experiences that led us to becoming the empowered and resilient women we are today. You'll leave this podcast with the skills, knowledge, and inspiration to start creating the life you deserve. Because if another woman can do it, so can you. Welcome back to another episode of She is Resilient. Today we're debunking one of the biggest trauma myths out there that I repeatedly have to help clients unlearn. But before we get into that, I just want to share with you how much I'm loving the Back Pocket Healing program so far. I love being there to support you and answer all of your questions. So if you're wanting to get personalized text and voice note support on nervous system healing, then I would absolutely love to see you inside of Back Pocket Healing. It's only $97 a month. That's only $24 a week for unlimited text and voice note support. So if you've been interested in getting more personalized support from me, now is the time to join Back Pocket Healing. And for the month of March only, if you book a single somatic experiencing session, you will get 1 month free of Back Pocket Healing so that you can get ongoing support after your session. Okay, so let's get into the show. We are talking about one of the biggest trauma myths, and it's the idea that trauma is stored in your hips, liver, or kidneys. This myth has been floating around for years, and while I understand why people say it, it's actually not how trauma works. So, in today's episode, I'm going to break down why trauma is not stored in the specific body parts, why people might continue to believe that they are, and most importantly, how trauma actually is stored in the body. So let's start with understanding where this idea came from, that trauma is stored in your organs or your muscles. There are a few reasons why people misunderstand this. So number one, the first reason is metaphorical language in traditional medicine. So in some healing traditions, organs are associated with emotions. So for example, like in traditional Chinese medicine, they link the liver to anger and the kidneys to fear. Now, while emotions can affect organ function, like when stress makes you go to the bathroom, for example, this doesn't mean that trauma is physically sitting in your liver or any other body part. Number two, the mind-body connection is so misunderstood. So when your nervous system goes into a state of survival, your body immediately prepares to fight the threat, flee from the threat, or freeze, becoming immobilized. So when you're in survival, the muscles in your hips play a significant role in helping you survive because they help you run. That's the flight response. They also help you kick, punch, or push, which is the fight response. Or they help you curl into a protective position, which is the freeze response. So if you've been through something stressful or traumatic, your hip muscles might stay tense because your nervous system is still on high alert. This is why people say trauma is stored in the hips, for example, but trauma itself isn't actually sitting in your hips like a trapped emotion. What's really happening is that your nervous system is keeping certain muscles in a protective or braced position, even if you're no longer in that danger. So when someone stretches their hips and suddenly they start to feel emotional, it's not because they've quote unquote unlocked trauma. It's because loosening that tension signals to the nervous system that it's safe to relax, which can bring up old unresolved feelings or can release some of that survival energy that's been stored. I hope that makes sense. And number three, Marketing and social media trends. Let's be honest, if someone says your trauma is stored in your liver, it sounds way catchier on social media than saying your nervous system dysregulation is influencing your body's stress responses, right? The internet loves a simple and maybe even an exaggerated statement. But then this leads to the spreading of misinformation. So let's talk about what trauma actually is and how it's really stored in your body. So you've heard me say this a gazillion times before, but trauma isn't about the event itself. It's about what happens inside of your body as a result of your nervous system not being able to complete the survival responses, fight, flight, or freeze, at the time of the original perceived or actual threat. And if you want to continue to dive deeper into trauma, I invite you to go back to episode 6, Trauma is Not What You Think, so that you can understand trauma a little more in addition to this episode. So that's episode 6, Trauma is Not What You Think. So if we don't complete these survival responses, then our nervous system stays stuck in a state of activation or shutdown because that survival energy remains stored in your body. So trauma is stored in the body as survival energy as opposed to a physical object in your organs or muscles. And that survival energy, aka trauma, is going to impact internal organs because your nervous system is responsible for all of your internal organs. But it's not physically placed in specific organs, like when people say trauma is stored in their liver or kidneys. It's just survival energy that then impacts the internal organs if that survival energy isn't appropriately discharged, which we're going to talk about in a bit. So I guess the question is, if trauma isn't literally stored in the liver, kidneys, or hips, why do people feel tightness or pain there, especially if they have experienced traumatic events? So first, like I mentioned earlier, the hip muscles are activated during stress responses. So when you're in fight or flight, it naturally tightens. So if someone has chronic stress or trauma, their hips might stay locked up. But again, that doesn't mean that trauma is stored there. It just means that their nervous system is still in a protective response, resulting in the hips tightening up. Another example of this is experiencing gut health issues and liver function issues because the vagus nerve connects the brain to the gut. So the vagus nerve is the primary nerve of the parasympathetic nervous system, and it travels from your brainstem down to the neck, into the chest, and ending in the abdomen. So when we're in prolonged states of fight or flight, your digestion slows down, leading to bloating, stomach issues, and even sluggish liver function. But just like the hips, trauma isn't trapped in the liver. It's just how stress influences how the organs function. And if you want to learn more about the brain-gut connection, I have an episode called IBS, Inflammation, and Trauma, where we dive more into how trauma impacts digestion and gut health issues. So now let's talk about how we actually heal trauma and release that survival energy. Hey there, if you're looking for daily somatic practices to add to your toolbox, I'd love to introduce you to my somatic bundle where I guide you through over 30 somatic tools and practices that support your nervous system by creating the safety that your nervous system requires to move out of survival mode. Just click the link in the show notes and you will get immediate access to my library of tools. See you there. And first, let me say that you cannot just shake out your trauma or have this cathartic moment and you magically heal your trauma. That's not how healing trauma works. And this is, again, misinformation that tends to be spread online because it's trendy, because people want quick fixes. And I get it. But as a trauma-trained professional of 9 years, I can confidently tell you that those somatic exercises that you see online that tell you you can unlock years of trauma by just shaking or doing hip exercises or whatever are for marketing purposes. So if you see anyone telling you that you can heal your trauma by doing this one somatic exercise, run. That is a red flag. When I talk about my somatic exercises and tools, I always like to make it very clear with saying that these are only tools and that they are there to support your nervous system and create safety in your nervous system as opposed to healing trauma altogether. Somatic tools are for short-term relief, and somatic experiencing, my private sessions, is for long-term relief. So let's talk about how we actually heal trauma. So healing trauma needs to be slow, gentle, and titrated. When we have cathartic moments, that might feel good mentally, emotionally, and maybe even physically, but it doesn't actually heal trauma because healing trauma is about completing survival responses that didn't get a chance to be completed at the time of the original perceived or actual threat. That's why so many people are in therapy for years and they've understood the ins and outs of their trauma, but yet they're still in survival mode. It's because talking about your trauma isn't going to complete those survival responses. We need to physically complete those survival responses in the body, using the body, which is exactly what we do in somatic experiencing. So this is how the nervous system actually releases trauma, not through hip stretches or cathartic yelling or shaking. It's through completing survival energy that was interrupted and became stuck. So if you take one thing from today's episode, let it be this. Trauma is not a physical thing stored in your liver or any other organ. It's an incomplete nervous system response. And healing isn't about stretching your hips or catharsis. It's about helping your body feel safe enough to complete what it couldn't in the past. So the next time someone tells you trauma is stored in the hips, I invite you to confidently say, actually, it's a nervous system response that needs completion. And if they give you a weird look, you can just send them this podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. If this episode was helpful, make sure to share it with a friend or leave a review. That is the primary way you can support me and this podcast. And like always, I appreciate you and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you absolutely loved this episode, I would so appreciate it if you subscribed and left a review on Apple Podcast. Or take a screenshot and share this episode on social media. The more nervous systems we reach, the more generational cycles we break, and the more we contribute to a kinder and safer world. And if you're looking for somatic healing services, send me a DM and I'd love to chat on how I can support you. I'll see you in the next episode.